Hi, and welcome to The Curling Show, the podcast that brings you interviews with the sport's top athletes and the people who shaped the game. Supported by listeners like Jonathan Wilson of Bellevue, Washington, who have made secure donations at thecurlingshow.com. I'm Dean Gemmel, and in this edition, we talk to a guy who doesn't have much game, but does seem to have what it takes to handle one of the most demanding jobs in our sport. The Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Curling Association, Greg Stremlaw, welcome back to The Curling Show.
Thanks, Dean. Thanks for having me.
You know, time flies, doesn't it? It was 2 seasons that have passed since you started heading up the CCA. It seems like it was not that long ago that you started, but it's been 2 seasons. What surprised you most about the job?
I don't know if there's been a lot of surprises. I'm actually, so far, very, very happy with the people I've had an opportunity to meet and a number of the travel opportunities going across the country and visiting some of these host committees and seeing the events that we have. I think, if anything, it's the amount of people that are so knowledgeable and or passionate about this sport. I had, quite frankly, no idea the degree by which that actually existed in Canada.
Probably especially true out west. I know you're a guy from Southern Ontario. You go west in Canada where the game is surely strongest. That was probably new for you, I guess.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. As I say, I mean, there's certainly everybody thinks about Canada and hockey, but certainly being immersed in the sport now, west is certainly strong, but coast to coast to coast, this great sport of curling is definitely out there. It's vibrant, and as I say, people are very passionate about it. So 2 years into it, what keeps you up at night? Just about everything, mostly trying to keep up with all the work that's going on, but nothing from, a stress standpoint. It's trying to think long-term in terms of how we make sure that we maintain the things that we've done well and, where we're going to be able to make those improvements that we need going forward. Those are basically most of the macro items that I think would be the things that would keep me up at night.
When we talked about 2 years ago, I guess you spoke a lot about wanting to get the game back into schools and really reaching out to young people and boosting those numbers again. One initiative, I guess, this year is the CCA with Capital One and Dominion General Insurance and Rocks and Rings, Chad McMullen's company there. Any other initiatives? Any other? It's a difficult challenge, I think. It sounds easy to get the game back in the schools, but there are some big challenges.
Yeah, no, you're right. You've touched on probably the biggest one that we're most proud of for this past year, and that is through our partnership with Capital One and Rock Solid Productions. We've had a very successful year in getting into the inner city school program, specifically in the Greater Toronto area, but there is a 3-year plan to grow that at a pretty high level and seeing it go out into other major urban markets across the country. We've been able to leverage some of our television broadcast time and showcase the Rocks and Rings program. And with that, I know you mentioned Chad, having trouble keeping up to the volume of demand that's out there. I believe at last check we've had 300 to 500 schools that have contacted the organizers and are trying to get the program into their school system, which I think is fantastic. I know at the launch that we did, certainly the magnitude of visual minority school children that were there. I think we did a quick survey of the 40 kids that attended the morning session. Only one had ever actually either seen curling or been to a curling rink before, so I think that's perfect. It's right up the alley that we were trying to get this program in front of a certain demographic of school kids, and that's worked very, very well.
That's a wake-up call, though, isn't it? That only one kid. I mean, the amount of curling that's on TV, only one kid in that demographic had seen it.
You're right. And some other things certainly that we're pleased with in terms of those other new populations or grassroots efforts. I think there's no secret we were able to hold the first ever national championship in any sport up in the territory of Nunavut. I think that was a great leadership role that we were able to play, and we did a number of clinics up there with the Aboriginal school children, which again I think really opened the eyes and gave them an opportunity to participate in a sport that they very well may be able to play for the rest of their life. So that was another huge asset for us. We're right now working on something called the Soldier On program. It's a potential cooperative project with the Department of National Defense to provide curling opportunities for Canadian soldiers. We had a whole bunch of new wheelchair curling camps this year, specifically in Saskatchewan and Quebec, Nova Scotia. So we are continuing to try and grow that that populace for curling and those curling opportunities for our wheelchair program. And we've made some inroads with visually impaired and working with the WCF to try and get this discipline further recognized and possible opportunities going forward, specifically with the potential of getting it into the Paralympics, which personally I think it does have a very decent chance at that in one of the future Paralympic Games.
I like the sound of that initiative with the Canadian Forces, by the way. I think one area, not only juniors, but curling clubs in general, we don't do a terrific job in the 20 to 30 age range either.
Right, no, agreed. And I guess similar to that, some of the stuff that we've, as you know, the partnership with the CIS and our university curling programs, I think have had a huge resurgence. It's been great to be able to see, being out at the Royal Montreal Curling Club this year and seeing a true bona fide national championship and all the teams that were in attendance. And I really think that that's a huge growth opportunity for the sport as well. And it was great to see a partner like Dominion step up and be the first ever presenting sponsor for such an event.
Yeah, that's gone from sort of a serious party to a serious event.
Absolutely.
And I think that is good news, as much as I like a party, but I think it's good news. Hey, not exactly cause for alarm, but not the year Canadians would have liked in World Championship events, with the only golds coming in seniors and wheelchair curling. I think there's some hand-wringing in Canada that goes on when this happens, and it's happened at other times in the past too, but there are some people in Canada, I think, who'd like to see the country restrict access to its facilities and events, restrict access to international teams. I think Team China was maybe not permitted to train at the Saville Center this year, but what's the CCA stand on that?
Well, I think any type of restriction of access, I think we have to be careful with, right? I mean, I think a healthy sport globally is good for Canada. And I think in terms of hand-wringing, we need to remember, before we focus in on only one or two events, to me, from a high-performance aspect, we want to look at it as the whole package. So, quite frankly, I'm very impressed with how we did as Canadians this year on the curling scene. I mean, I've read the same articles that maybe there was only so many golds, but let's look at some of the performances. I mean, you touched on the seniors. I mean, double gold, I think that's tremendous. I think we had, from a junior standpoint, although we would have loved to have had two golds, both Team Gallant and Team Laws with two silvers. Both of those were improvements from the year prior, so that's fantastic for our junior teams. The first ever World Wheelchair gold medal at the World Wheelchair Championships. I mean, great testament to Jim Armstrong and that whole crew and Team Canada there, and a vast improvement on a fourth place finish the year prior. And certainly our world mix, let's not forget about that. It was the first ever Canadian podium result in that sport, or in that discipline, even though it's only its second year. Yet another improvement of the year prior. So most people go and they look specifically only maybe at the men's and women's world, and then certainly I know that Jennifer would have liked to have had a different result, but you know what? Sometimes these things occur, and they're learning opportunities, and there's no doubt that team is still extremely capable of winning gold at any given day. And well, we can question any calls that were made or not made at the men's world, but I think it was still a great success for Kevin and his team. A silver medal at the World Championships is nothing to hang a head over, and they'll continue to have their sights set on further goals going forward. So, I mean, right now, if we were to pull up the world rankings, I think that's where we want to make sure that we maintain our consistency. And at last check, Canada is in number one in the men's discipline in world curling with 916 points, with a sizable cushion over Scotland. And in the world rankings from a women's standpoint, I think although Sweden has closed the gap a little bit, we again continue to be number one in the world in women's curling for the last 2 years, which I think is fantastic for the women's program.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with all that, including the fact, I mean, even Kevin Martin noted during the Worlds that if the game is only strong in Canada, we don't have much of a game to begin with. And it's funny because people get upset when a team loses a world final or whatever else, but we all know at that level the game it comes down to a matter of inches, a half shot here or there, and you can run an event 1 week and a different team wins. And I think the key is if your teams are in the hunt or are usually on the podium, I guess you're doing well.
I would agree, and I think that's the key phrase, Dean, the consistent podium results. And I think based on that quick synopsis, to me, I think Canadians and Canada were we're certainly more consistent across the board than any other member nation of the World Curling Federation this year by far.
And speaking of rewarding consistency, let's talk about the Canadian curling trials process. I think it was validated somewhat by the way Team Furby pre-qualified on the last shot of the 3-year exercise, the last shot of the season, right down to the end there. But many say it's too long, too complicated, too something, I guess. Do you think the CCA will take another look at it before the next Olympics, or do you think it's pretty solid?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Dean, I think we owe it to ourselves and to the athletes and to various stakeholders to take a look at it. I think it's in our best interest to make sure proper analysis is provided. That said, I think we're still in the process, so to make comment on it before we even know what the results actually achieve would be premature. I think as one of your counterparts, Bob Weeks, has pointed out before, although he has a certain opinion on it, it will be certainly hard to argue if the trials are incredibly successful and we produce 2 qualitative teams that go on and represent Canada in a great manner and perhaps, again, have consistent podium results and perhaps golds. I think that we need to make sure that we see that process through and then do that analysis. And right now, a lot of indicators to me would point to the fact that there are a lot of pros to how we are going about in doing that. Are there tweaks and changes that likely can occur? Absolutely.
You know, I do like the fact that in my mind it did reward consistency over a long period of time there without 3 years. And I do think that the 4 teams that have qualified for the Roar of the Rings are the most deserving ones myself. So from that point of view, I guess it worked. Scott Pfeiffer was on the show, mentioned he thought maybe there should be maybe 6 teams pre-qualify. I can sort of see that argument. But again, you're right. I think you have to wait till you have the event next year in Edmonton, which should be a good one. And then we see how the Olympics go. Hey, let's touch on another relationship for your organization, the one with the WCF. Maybe some disagreement over hosting of world events in Canada?
Well, I don't think there's a disagreement, Dean. I think right now, for the last year and a half, the World Curling Federation and the Canadian Curling Association have continued to work on a long-term partnership with the International Federation and how we can go about to host world's international events in the largest curling nation in the world and make sure that it's mutually beneficial. And there's a lot of things that are involved in that, right? I mean, we've got everything from sponsors to television to athletes to you name it, business models, and so I'm very pleased that over the last year and a half we've had, I'd say, at least 4 very lengthy sessions in various cities to work through some of this. And so far, I remain optimistic that we'll be able to find something that is mutually beneficial for both bodies. Right now, the closest one that we're on, which is kind of the tip of the iceberg potentially, but we've just about completed a new Continental Cup arrangement, which in my opinion will help see the potential growth of that event. And certainly, the WCF and CCA have, I believe, found a way that will add unprecedented consistency to that event. Whether people love the event, don't love the event, certainly the athletes that I speak to love the event. And so to have the same broadcaster going forward, to have 28 hours of coverage versus the 7, have it in the same time slots year in and year out so people can actually know when it's going to happen, when to plan for it, etc. And perhaps even a willingness to host it in an Olympic year like 2014. So that's one thing of many that I remain optimistic that our 2 groups will be able to, again, find a middle ground on.
You do realize this is about the most unlikely place to announce that the Continental Cup is continuing.
I don't know if I'd say that's an announcement, just giving a glimpse in terms of the potential arrangement that's looking very fruitful right now.
I've been sharply critical of the Continental Cup in the past, but I have admitted that I thought this year's event was a better one. But I'll remain a holdout on it. But I did see some promise this year. So, and you're right about the players; they all love it. I know I'd love it if I was a player, but. We'll see. I mean, I guess the Ryder Cup didn't happen overnight either, so I need to temper some of my criticism. 8 ends versus 10. Where does that issue stand these days?
Well, I think from a CCA standpoint, certainly anything that would be changed in that capacity would need to go to our membership, and there would need to be votes taken. Right now, I wouldn't say it's necessarily either a hot-button issue or something that's on the immediate radar screen. I think we've seen some pros and cons to both 8 ends and 10 ends. We're certainly working with the International Federation and keeping a close eye in terms of what they may or may not do. And I think that in the recent AGM and annual meetings that they held in Moncton, New Brunswick, it was discussed by all the member nations that more analysis needs to be done. And I think that's a good thing. I think that before anybody makes any fundamental decisions or changes like that, I think, maybe there needs to be more analysis on thinking time versus playing time, on other ways to perhaps fit a curling game within that proverbial 3-hour window for television that still respects the commercial allotments on an hourly basis. And if that can be done, there may be other ways to do it besides an 8-end game. So I think personally more analysis does need to occur, and I think we're going to, as I say, be watching very closely to see what the world body does, because obviously a lot of our national championships dovetail into what happens on the international level for Worlds.
Yeah, I think those are good points. I did like the argument that the TV coverage demands it. I do think there are ways to compress the TV coverage, and we saw a bit of that with TSN this year, where they would cut back and Ray would explain where certain rocks ended up. It's nice to see lead rocks, but I don't know if we have to see them every end, even as a guy who played lead this year. So
I agree.
I think that I can see the merit of arguments on both sides. So I'm glad you're taking a closer look at it. Hey, I'll end with, not end, but I'll finish here with one of the more sticky issues, the Tim Hortons Brier format and which teams should be in it, which provinces. That's becoming more and more of a hot button. I've got good friends and even family on both sides of the issue. So what are the steps the CCA is thinking about?
Well, I think it's a great question, and although it may be the sense of sticky, I don't view it as that. I view it as an opportunity, and I think from a CCA standpoint, what we have done is we have put together what we've called our team entry committee, and that involves both our member associations and Canadian Curling Association representatives to really look at the whole topic of accessibility to championships. And that's not just for the Brier, but across the board. We have 14 members that are out there, and we want to make sure that we're considering all of their interests. And so various options are being looked at, and you may see some of the more minor national championships looked at first to see how things work and how they don't work, and then from there looking at some of those more entertainment packages or properties such as the Brier or the Scotties Tournament of Hearts. But that right now is where we're at. Over the last 6 months, there's been, I think, considerable analysis done by that committee, and working closely with our members, which I think is important because, again, it's similar to that 8 ends versus 10 ends. You don't want to go and make a rush decision that ends up coming back and we have regrets about it. And we want to make sure that as much input as possible is taken into the analysis, because it is a pretty complicated scenario. It involves a lot of stakeholders. It involves the fans, it involves the athletes, it involves a business case scenario with sponsors and television and broadcast time, and so on. So all of those need to be factored into any decisions that are made. And so that's where we're at. I think there's going to be some information tabled at this year's National Curling Congress when all the delegates from across the country are in town, and we'll have some really qualitative discussion on it.
Despite changes in the game, that Tim Hortons Brier remains a fairly magic formula. There are certainly some games that aren't as exciting as others or whatever else, and there's certainly always the debate about Northern Ontario, I guess, but quite honestly, I think there's, if they're going to have that debate, it can't just be about Northern Ontario, and that's not just because I have a built-in Northern Ontario bias. I think it has to be, take a bigger look at it than that.
No, I would agree, and as I say, to me, if everybody embraces it as a sincere opportunity, I think we'll all be the better for it when the final outcomes are done. In fact, I think it'll make the sport better, and if it's handled well, it could make some of our events even more exciting.
That's probably true. Well, Greg, we finished with the run back. I give you a topic, you give me your thoughts in 1 to 3 words.
All right.
A Brier in London, Ontario, close to your hometown.
I think it'd be quite successful.
Your own curling talent.
Lacking.
Do you play much? Do you get to play much?
Not really, no.
No?
No. A couple times this year was about it, Steve.
Yeah. Glenn Howard shot to beat Saskatchewan in the Tim Hortons Brier.
Fantastic. Was there in person and enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah, it was something. Hats off to Saskatchewan for not playing a different shot and leaving them that. So,
yeah.
Capital One, at least here in the U.S., not needing to raise new capital after the government's stress test.
Not enough information.
You can say good news on that. I mean, you guys are tied in with Capital One, and that's a great relationship for curling in general.
It is a fantastic relationship, and hats off to Capital One for getting heavily involved across the board.
Yeah, I mean, they really stepped up with curling, and I hope we can continue to keep them engaged. The venue for curling at the Vancouver Olympics.
Unique.
All right, that was a nice hedge. I'll say too small, but the bankruptcy of the Phoenix Coyotes and the possibility of an NHL team in the Hamilton area.
Well, I guess as I read this morning, it's round 3 between Bettman and Balsillie, and certainly have a lot of respect for Jim, certainly coming out of the KW area and having some business dealings with RIM. So I wish him the best of success, and as a bona fide Canadian, I'd love to see another franchise here in Canada.
I think it just comes down to the fact that Bettman won't admit that he can't sell hockey in places that the only ice is in the freezer. I mean, it's unbelievable. Jim's a
pretty determined man, though. So if round 3 doesn't go well, he'll be back for round 4. He does not know the word quit.
Well, good for him. I mean, I'd love to see Phoenix or Tampa or one of those teams. And I grew up in Canada. I'm an American citizen now, but I always thought it was tragic when there wasn't a team in the Twin Cities for a few years too. So I think you got to put the game in the right places, and I don't think Phoenix or Tampa are the right places. Hungary's silver medal at the World Mixed Doubles.
Well, a nice Canadian connection there with Darrell Ellis. So congratulations to them. I guess from a Canadian standpoint, although we finished with a bronze, without a page playoff format, I guess their 3 losses still got them a silver. Our 1 loss gets us a bronze, but that's the way things go. But congratulations to Hungary.
Yeah, I mean, good for them to in that kind of event to come out there. The mixed doubles especially seems although Switzerland has gone 2 years without losing, so maybe it's not it's not as difficult to put a win string together as I think. But everybody who plays in that event seems to rave about it. But when you watch it, the little bit that we have seen it doesn't seem that exciting to me.
And they had a great venue too this year. I think hats off to Cortina and that refurbished facility that was the host of the 1956 games. It used to be the outdoor stadium, but they enclosed it in, and I know the athletes just raved about it.
Do you see any role for mixed doubles in clubs going forward?
I do. I really do. I think really if there's an opportunity there, and we're going to see more people to be able to go out and do the couples thing, whether it's getting to know and the dating scene or just a husband-wife situation that can actually instead of going to a movie, have a babysitter come in and go out to the club and enjoy a few hours out together. I do see that as a growth opportunity. I really do.
I haven't thought about that as a good first date opportunity. Mixed doubles would be low stress and. Maybe not, actually. Maybe too high stress for a first date. But and finally, junior curlers becoming eligible to play down in the Tim Hortons Brier or the Scotties Tournament of Hearts.
Well, I know that's one of the notices for consideration that's on the floor this year in terms of that there shouldn't be age restrictions based on if the talent's there. The talent alone should be able to get you in. And I say let our members decide on that. And if that's what they want, I have no personal problems with it whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's made it curious to me is the Rachel Holman team, who are junior age, and now they're in the pre-trials, and I quite honestly, I think they're just 4 terrific young curlers.
And it's just a matter of time, just like many other sports, Dean. I mean, we've seen it in women's tennis, we've seen it in all sorts of other disciplines where some young athletes are very capable and or perhaps are at the top of the sport, and therefore should we restrict their participation based on one factor alone. And as I say, we'll let the members decide on that. And if that's the will of the membership, then clearly you'll see that change here in Canada.
Yeah, and also a bit of a balancing act too, to be fair, though, because we've seen what happens when 14-year-olds have are playing tennis, and it doesn't always work out so well for the players.
I guess the question will be: is there a proverbial line that needs to be drawn, and if so, where is it? At what age? So that'll be interesting to see.
All right, Greg. Hey, I appreciate your time as always. I think you guys have you've done a terrific job. I know you're proud of your organization, and you've tackled a lot of big problems. I don't think everything goes smoothly, but you guys seem to be putting the shoulder to the wheel and getting things done.
Thanks very much, Dean. I appreciate the feedback.
That's Greg Stremlaw on The Curling Show. I hope you're enjoying our sports off-season, but remember to return to this podcast when you need your curling fix. We may not post as frequently during the spring and summer, but we will continue to provide the sports-only long-format interview show. As always, thanks for listening. Enjoy some pudding.